The following is a conversation with Joe Sullivan. Joe is an all-time world record-holding powerlifter, one of the best lifters of our generation, as well as being a highly intelligent and outspoken voice in our industry. Now, for any of my strength athlete or powerlifting fans in my audience, my followers, this one is going to be directly interesting to you. You probably know of Joe. We're going to talk about powerlifting specifically, his career, programming, all those things. But for my non-powerlifting savvy audience, this one is still going to be very interesting for you. We're going to talk a lot about mindset. Joe has overcome immense adversity in his life and his career. He's come back from several catastrophic injuries. We talk about champion mentality and what goes into being an all-time world record holder at the level that he is and all the things he has had to overcome to get there. Now, full disclaimer, we are going to go a bit into the topic of performance-enhancing drugs, and that is a reality of strength sports. We are not talking about it in a way to condone it or encourage it or speak on it casually. On the contrary, Joe is one of the voices in our industry who advocates for safe, responsible, intelligent use and aims only to educate on a topic that has become so widely abused and nonchalantly, irresponsibly used. So full disclaimer, that is a topic we will go into directly. But other than that, sit back, enjoy this conversation with Joe Sullivan. A couple announcements on my end. The podcast, Hammer and Chisel Performance, will be coming out every Tuesday with guest interviews. I've got several lined up on the docket, several already recorded. So keep an eye out for those coming out every Tuesday. And then on every Sunday, I'll be doing the Q&A version of this podcast. As always, I'll be continuing to put out content on nutrition, training, coaching, and more on my Instagram. You can DM me for one-on-one comprehensive training and or nutrition coaching. I've got a couple programs for sale on Train Heroic. You can go to the link in my Instagram bio for that. I've got a 12-week power building program and a 12-week physique program, and then the Hammer and Chisel Performance website will be coming out soon, where I'll have more programs releasing, ebooks, vlogs, and we'll be continuing to put out content on the YouTube channel. So anyway, without further ado, enjoy this conversation with the great and powerful Joe Sullivan. All right, guys, welcome back to the Hammer and Chisel Performance podcast. I've got my second guest on here. His name is Joe Sullivan. For any of my powerlifting leaning audience, you already know who this guy is. For any of my non-powerlifting savvy audience, you are going to get introduced to this guy. Joe is he's an absolutely elite powerlifter, was an all-time world record holder in powerlifting. He's been a very prominent figure in the sport for years now. He's a very successful coach in powerlifting, and he's running a very successful business right now. And he's currently in the pursuit of a little bit of a new venture, which we will touch on as things unfold here. As you can see, he's throwing down a meal right now. It's high carb day. We cannot miss a meal. All my nutrition clients, you know this. Joe, welcome to the podcast, man.
Hey, dude. First of all, I really appreciate you having me. I've followed John for a minute now, and it's always really great information. And I love the sports performance side of the equation. And it's like, I think that's one of the reasons I'm as an effective coach as I am, is because I apply that. I don't just think in the powerlifting box. It's like, how can we bring up someone's aerobic capacity to facilitate better pushing in the context of powerlifting, et cetera, along with coordination, jumping, plyometrics for tendon resiliency, explosive power, whatever else. It's not a pitch for my coaching. John already did that. That was a high praise intro, man. I appreciate that. But I will correct you. I'm still an all-time world record holder. I still got that motherfucker.
I stand corrected, and that is a very important distinction. Yeah, I wanted to really set the bar high here, so now I can make myself look better if you fall short of that bar over the course of this podcast, because I am not an all-time world record holder, and I never have been, for those of you who are wondering. But I have been a competitive powerlifter. Powerlifting was my first love. And you touched on something which, it's a whole conversation in itself, just looking at training through a holistic lens. I think so many coaches get pigeonholed into this just one niche within their programming. And I saw it so much as a strength and conditioning coach in football. You know, we had strength coaches who were Olympic guys, like their whole program was just centered around power cleans and the Olympic lifts. Then there's coaches who are just powerlifting biased coaches. And I mean, you see that everywhere, but it's so true. Like, we're dealing with human organisms here. Training it's a huge puzzle. It's all about piecing all those little puzzles together. And I'd love to pick your brain on here about programming. Joe, if you don't mind, just for my audience, for those of them who don't know you as well, do you mind giving a quick bio on yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I will try not to spend as much time as I could on just explaining like who the fuck I am and what I've done. Also, I cuss a lot, so FYI to anybody on the
floor
podcast.
Is yours, man. Spend all the time you need.
Fantastic. But I started competitively powerlifting in 2007. So that is like 17 years ago, close to 18 years ago now. Yeah. That's legitimately over half my life, being 31 years old now. There's a reason that I am such a presence in powerlifting. It's very difficult to have any degree of longevity in this sport. And that's something that I really pride myself on, is being both smart enough to know how to make myself allow myself to continue to do this thing that I love in the sport that I love so much, but also I'm just too goddamn stubborn to quit. You know, I'll never walk away from this damn thing. And I love it. But I started in 2007. I would be described as a very, very different person than I am now, because my first competition, I weighed in, I believe, at like 288 pounds, and my total was 1,075 pounds. Over the course of high school, I lost over 100 pounds because I joined the wrestling team. Wrestling and powerlifting were my main things. Lost over 100 pounds, ended up making it to the state finals. My senior year as a wrestler, I was all state. I ended up losing, which is fine, but went to college, figured out you can be very, very good at high school wrestling, and then when you go to collegiate wrestling and you're the strong guy in high school that doesn't really have great technique, everybody's fucking strong in college and everybody has great technique, and I was just getting my ass kicked every single practice. So I ended up walking away from that my sophomore year of college and ended up just going full on in to powerlifting. And ever since then, it's the rest is history. I essentially decided, like, okay, I need a competitive venture. I love competing with people. I love seeing personal improvement. And I always have been that dude that's got a little bit of shift in my noggin where it's like, I need to do hard shit and I need to beat the shit out of myself. Otherwise, I don't know how to manage everything I got in here. And I never stopped. And then 2017, my first total was 1,075 pounds. I ended up totaling 2,121. Got second place at my first my first go at a professional powerlifting meet, the 2017 U.S. Open. That broke the all-time world record, the junior all-time world record total record, which I still hold to this day. And then beyond that, in 2020, I continued to train, continued to get better, and I broke the open all-time world record squat, which was then held by Amit Sapir at 821 pounds. I squatted 822, and since 2020, I have pushed that all-time world record to 851 pounds when I set that March of 2023. And throughout all this, I've always just been some dude with a smartphone posting shit on the internet, and that's really all I am now. I just kind of figured out how to do it in a way that allows me to coach clients that are better than I am and help people on a scale that I never really thought possible. And that's where we're at. You know, I've owned a gym. I got out of the gym ownership game just due to COVID happened, and I was like, it's crazy. But I've been in a lot of different places, a lot of different situations, and the one constant in my life has been the iron and has been training in some capacity. You know, and that even remains to this day. You know, because as John was talking about. I'm not to cut you off or preemptively cut out any of your questions, dude, but I'm in a little bit of a transitionary period. because I'm getting old, guys. I'm 31 now, and you squat 800 pounds so many times every year, and your shit starts to feel a little bit worse and worse as we go forward.
So I've been told.
Yeah.
No, it's true. We hit that. I'm 30. We're very close in age. It feels like we hit that big 3-0, and then we're the old guys. And then, of course, I've never been under an 800-pound squat bar, but I've had my fair share of 800-pound plus deadlifts, been under some heavy-ass yokes, body's taking a beating from football. So
and I was going to say probably a total of more than 800 pounds running into your face multiple times.
Yeah.
Over the course of a couple years. So
yeah, and it's I like to say I was people are powerlifters and strongman competitors long enough to see themselves become a bodybuilder, because that bodybuilding training, man, a little easier on the joints, getting in the Smith machine, getting into some leg extensions, leg curls. It feels a little better on the body.
I can listen to podcasts when I train right now, man. It's so chill. It's so nice.
Yeah, no doubt. And it's just, I'm doing the bodybuilding thing right now, and I've always been big on physique and nutrition and dieting like a bodybuilder. But this year I'm actually going to do the damn thing and get on a bodybuilding stage. But there's just something about the bodybuilding training compared to the strongman or the powerlifting. It's just, to me, it's less stressful. Like if I was going into a big strongman event day, there's a little bit of that anxiety, a little bit of that, not fear, but I mean, it's far more dangerous, and there's more pressure. Like you've got these numbers you got to hit, you've got a competition on the horizon. There's so much of the execution of all of it. Whereas the bodybuilding, you can kind of come in, vibe out a little bit, connect with the target muscle group, and it's less stressful to me. Do you feel the same way with that?
Absolutely, dude. I've had this conversation a million times over. Like we were talking a little bit before the podcast actually started, and just to build on that, like, and what you just said, I really mean it when it's like, I can listen to podcasts when I train right now, because I'm primarily seeking out hypertrophy training. It's like bodybuilding oriented, like just physique training right now. And it's really just a lot more relaxed feeling for me. And I understand, like, because my best friend, Jared Feather, is my best friend. He's an IFBB pro. He's one of the guys on Renaissance Periodization. Incredibly smart dude. He has made bodybuilding his like vocation in the way that I've made powerlifting. So he feels a lot more psychological pressure going into competitions. But because I've always had that performance at the end. I haven't just had I'm going to get on stage and like I need to present myself in this manner and blah, blah, blah. It's always been I need to execute in some degree of performance, whether it's against another person in a combat sport or against a barbell that is 851 pounds, that if I lose focus for a millisecond, it will kill me, or it will attempt to kill me. Bodybuilding, it's just a lot more relaxed for me. And even as I trudge forward in my own little respective journey, I just don't feel any pressure, because it's just like even in the hardest moments of the diet, I look at the end goal and I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna end up on stage. I just get the little tan and then I fucking go up there and I'm like, cool. And then if some guy looks better than I do, I'm like, I can't control that. I don't know his training. There's nothing that I can do. Like if I was on a bodybuilding stage, or you're getting on a bodybuilding stage, I couldn't motivate you or cue you or like coach you to victory on that day. It's like, if you do this one thing, you got this, brother. It's like, no, not really with bodybuilding. Like, it's all about the work that came before. And there is all that work that came before when it comes to powerlifting or football or Olympic weightlifting or whatever. But then there's that matter of execution with all of the other sports, where it's like, no, somebody could do everything better than you in prep and could be a better athlete, better strength, more force production, faster, whatever. But you could have that killer instinct and he might not. And if he fucks up, you can win. In bodybuilding, it's just so different, because that's not that component. It's just like, why is there pressure? I don't feel any pressure. I'm just fucking training, getting lean and hanging out,
Yeah, I mean, that's such a good point, because it feels like the end result of bodybuilding is so much more in your control. because like you said, it's a reflection of all the work you put in. Yeah, I mean, you got to go up there, you got to go through your posing routine, and I know that's kind of a difficult thing in and of itself, but
Mhm.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's not like you're going to get up there and your body fat levels are going to vary depending on how you execute that day. Your body fat levels are going to be what they're going to be. The amount of muscle mass you're carrying is going to be what it is, and that's all a result of what you've put in. So it's kind of like you're in control of the end outcome versus any other sport. It's
Mhm.
like for football, I could have the best week of practice, best week of film study, but I've still got to go out there and block a freak defensive end who is
Mhm.
way more athletic than me, runs a 4.5, and if I take one wrong step, he's going to expose me. He's going to get the sack, and all my great work for the week is out the window. Or in powerlifting, you still got to go out there. You got to execute all your attempts. You got to, pick the right weight selections,
Mhm.
execute to the standard. There's always the chance, what you miss your opener, and then, oh shit, what are you going to do now? Whereas with bodybuilding, hey man, go up there, show off your hard work. But anyway, I feel like we've been a little ambiguous this whole thing. Why don't you go ahead and tell the good folks what's really going on here?
Well, before I even get into that, I'm going to ask you, John, what show are you doing? What are you doing, bro?
I don't have a show picked out yet. I don't have it picked out yet. I only
How
made
lean
the
are you?
decision. What's that?
How lean are you? You want to go to Disneyland, bud?
Well, I'm in a growth phase right now. So
Okay,
I,
fine,
I
fine. Yeah,
finished
forgot.
dieting about 8 weeks ago.
Mhm.
At the end of that diet, and I've done this process for years now,
Mhm.
dieting, going through the whole bodybuilding process. And then this past go around, I was like, you know what? I love this so much. Like I've got the itch for this. I actually really like the way I look now. I'd fuck it. Like I'm gonna get on stage. Like I want to have a competition, light a fire into my ass, and not just do this for not just do this
Mhm.
for nothing. So I'm in a growing phase right now. I'm going to try to add as much muscle as I can. I got to bring my legs up,
Mhm.
um, and then once I kind of get near the end of this thing, I'm going to pick a show out. I'm going to work with. Are you familiar with Justin Harris?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, with Troponin Nutrition. He's
Mhm.
been someone I've worked with on and off over the years. So we're gonna pick a show. He's gonna prep me, and I'm gonna get on stage and just do the damn thing. So
I love it,
no,
man.
I'm
I
excited
love
for it.
it. The only reason I said that is because I forgot you were in a growth phase. But if to everybody listening, the reason that I asked John if he wanted to go to Disneyland is because on April 26th I am going to Anaheim, California, and I'm going to get on the bodybuilding stage for the first time. So that's like 13 weeks or so
Hmm.
away. I've been dieting for 8 weeks thus far already. And just as I've lost body fat, and I like, truth be told, this is the most adherent that I've been to a diet in regards to like 100% compliance since I was a collegiate wrestler, honestly. Like, because I did that for my whole youth, like, and it was just, I got to a point where I'm like, I can't, like, I'll follow a diet, but I did the powerlifter follow a diet. I'd eat like all of my meals during the day, and then dinner would be like, fuck it, I don't know, I'll get Wendy's, or like I'll make a big bowl of beef and rice or something, and like just random shit, just that last little bit was untracked. But I'm actually being coached by my partner, by Brianni Terry, who's she is a coach in her own right. Her and I work together. She's incredibly smart. She's a certified nutritionist through precision nutrition and all that jazz and whatnot. She's also the strongest female deadlifter in the world. She pulls 646 pounds and 180 pounds body weight. That's the best ever done by anybody, regardless of weight class. The woman she took it from was over 300 pounds, and Bree is just a freak of an athlete, but also a damn good coach. And we got a really good system over here. And I was just kind of like, I've never done this. I'm more interested, not more interested, but I have a greater degree of allocated energy towards like growing my business and trying new things and just challenging myself in different ways beyond powerlifting now. And I was like, you know what? Fuck it. She did it. I got to, like, Hunter Henderson is both of our like best friend. She's also an IFBB pro and a powerlifting all-time world record holder. And I was like, you know what? Fuck it. These guys have done it. I'm gonna do it. And coming from the background that I did, where I was like over 300 pounds in high school, talking about bodybuilding being like kind of out of your control and like some freak of nature might show up, and it's like just reflective of the work I've done personally. I know, like, I look at myself now, and the check-in photos I'm taking, I think about what my 14, 13-year-old self would have said. And I'm like, I could get last place and I don't give any fuck at all up there. I'm so stoked to be able to do this shit and to look like literally what I dreamed of looking like as a kid. And it's like, I get goosebumps talking about that. So it's just super.
Yeah. Yeah, man, I think that is super cool. And it's true. Like for me with competitive bodybuilding, I have no illusions or aspirations that I'm going to be an IFBB pro. Like I'm built weird. I'm 6'7". I got long, skinny legs. I'm built more like a field athlete.
Mm-hmm.
But like you said, I've gotten my physique to a point I never would have imagined it ever getting to. So it's, it's cliche, but it's just me versus me up there. Like, I just want to bring the freakiest physique that I possibly can for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And who knows how things will go. But, I was the offensive lineman body growing up. I was always 315 pounds, not lean. And I always wanted abs. Like growing up, I grew up in an NFL household. My dad, he's an NFL coach. My brother, he plays in the NFL. So like the NFL football players, that was normal to me. That was like dad's coworkers.
Mm-hmm.
My idols were the bodybuilders, the powerlifters, the strongman competitors. So there was always part of me that wanted that physique. And I know you used to be the chubby kid, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Because like I was saying, when I was talking about like being over 300 pounds, getting into high school, like that's not a trained weight. That's not like me. I was lifting weights back then. The extent of my activity was playing PlayStation 2 or RuneScape at my Nana's house. And I actually just made a reel about this the other day because it was my Nana's birthday, and she's since passed. She'd be 100 years old if she was still alive. And God love the woman. She was like my biggest fan, but she lived through the Great Depression, and her way of showing me love, because I went through a lot of poverty and a lot of want with my mom and dad, and then I went to live with my grandparents while my parents basically sorted that issue out. And I went from being in a household where I couldn't eat what I wanted because like we just didn't have enough food to do that, to my Nana's house. And she was like, I have to feed and feed and feed all of my loved ones because I never want them to want for anything. And she wanted us to be big and strong. And I eventually got to the big and strong part, but for the longest period, I was just big. And throughout high school, it was it was a story of like yo-yo dieting. I would do the thing where I would like lose a bunch of weight and then gain a bunch of weight back, lose a bunch of weight, gain a bunch of weight back, blah, 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 blah. And honestly, it was a struggle for me to have a good relationship with like food and my own body image for a long period of time, just because of that up and down approach, and kind of not breaking, but like re-evaluating the expectations I had surrounding food and eating and whatever, after just being fed whatever the fuck I wanted. Like I remember, dude, I could like, and I'm sure like you were an NFL household, you're 6'7", like your basal metabolic rate is a fuck ton, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. Especially when you were doing football. Like I'm sure you had to eat like a lot of food, but I recall I'd have like breakfast at her house, lunch at school. I'd get like the meal ticket or whatever. We had the little coupon tickets where we give them, and it's like one lunch, and it's like buffet style. I just load up on stuff at the slop hall. Basically, I'd walk home from elementary school and junior high to my Nana's house because she lived like a mile and a half away. As soon as I got there, do you know about the frozen El Monterey, like taquitos, those rolled tacos?
Oh yeah, I do.
I would eat 6 of those as my afternoon snack with a big glass of 2% milk.
Yeah,
and it's like that was just a snack, and then you look back and it's like, wait a minute, those things are kind of hefty, and it's like that's like 2,000 calories right there. What the fuck is going on, And it was just it was funny, and there's still residual effects there. I mean, I showed before starting the podcast, I showed John my last check-in photo, and I still have like loose skin from it, and there's still like some weird mental artifacts in there where it's like, oh, am I going to get fat if I do this, blah, 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 but it's really, it's really empower, like for anybody listening to this that like might struggle with something similarly. I can't, and I'm sure John you'd share the same sentiment. Like I can't share how much, like how much pride and how much like accomplishment I feel seeing the way that I look like now and thinking about like getting up on stage. Cause it's like, if I said, okay, Joe, when you were 15 years old, you have to put on a Speedo and get up on stage and prance around in front of people and be judged against other men, I would be like, I would literally rather die than do that. And now it's like, no, I think that's going to be badass. And I'm going to be proud of the way that I look. It's very, very empowering when you realize like you're truly the person who's in control of what happens in here and in here. And it's a really cool thing.
Yeah, and that's such a good perspective to have. And first of all, you look fucking awesome. I mean, Joe showed me his check-in photos. You're looking freaking great. You're looking ahead of schedule. I mean, you lean, waist is tight, quad sweeps are huge, and you've been posting updates on Instagram and everything. I mean, seeing you, like, I'm blown away. And you know, you've had, obviously, neither of us are quote unquote built for powerlifting. We don't have the God-given round muscle bellies and perfect insertions and symmetry and all this. But I mean, every week you're posting these check-ins that you're just improving, and you look like a legit bodybuilder right now. And it's so true. Like sometimes it's hard to have that when you're in it and you're starting to get to a high level, whether as a lifter or a physique or whatever. It's easy to get stuck in this "it's not good enough" mindset. But it's so true. Like if the young me could see, you know, the fact that I deadlifted 825, the fact that I have abs, any of these things, like I would be blown away. Like my childhood self, like would idolize me. It would idolize you. And I'm sure your younger self would idolize you. And so, I mean, it's a great perspective to have. And I feel like so many people who've been doing bodybuilding their whole life, their mindset is so much more toxic about this. It's the constant, I don't look good, I look terrible. Whereas you're kind of coming in with this, you know, no pressure mindset. You're a powerlifter. You're not a bodybuilder. There's no expectations of you. But these people who have been career bodybuilders, they've got these terrible self-image issues, and you know, they're shredded, and they're looking at themselves in the check-ins. It's I'm not ready. This isn't good enough. So, no, I think it's a fantastic mindset that you have, and that's awesome. And I'm sure the young you would be incredibly proud of that. Anyway, the audience, you thought you were coming for Joe Sullivan, the all-time world record holding powerlifter, and you're getting Joe Sullivan, the bodybuilder.
Crazy.
Yeah. Well, there's a few things I want to unpack. I want to come back to Brianni, your girlfriend, and go over kind of that dynamic. But real quick, let's just go back to the powerlifting, and we'll kind of move forward. What first got you into powerlifting? Because I mean, most kids they don't gravitate towards powerlifting as a sport.
I will be starting powerlifting back in 2007. That's actually before the inception of Raw powerlifting, which Raw back in the original iteration of Raw was Raw with wraps, and then Classic was Raw and knee sleeves, which is like what is the common Raw now. I started powerlifting in 2007 because I was playing football. I was an offensive lineman and a nose tackle because I was a big circular looking kid, and they were like, hey, you need to get in the weight room to get stronger. And by my own fortune, the high school that I went to in Flint, Michigan had a club powerlifting team. So I just was basically, it was handed to me on a silver platter essentially. And I didn't even consider that like this would be the thing that I built my entire life around in the future. I built my business. I've met Brianni through powerlifting. Like I've met the best people. The only reason I'm talking to John right now is probably because I'm Joe Sullivan powerlifter, you know, like it's really a formative, like core thing in my life. And I was just lucky because there was a club club team at my high school, and the freshman defensive coordinator for football was also the head powerlifting coach. And he's like, you need to get into this. We need to do this because you need to get stronger for football and wrestling. And then I ended up just getting thrown into powerlifting meets. And this was back, I was wearing single ply. I had knee wraps on. I had no idea what I was doing because coaching back then wasn't so much like technique coaching. It was just put this on, tie this, like, come on, go down, chest up, fucking drive, hips, rah, 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 you know. It may not have been the most productive, like, in a foundational sense, but it was the foundation, and that's where I started, you know.
Was it, back then, would it have been, do you remember the programming at all that you were doing initially? Was it conjugate, West Side stuff?
It wasn't conjugate, because the coach that I had, my two coaches were Coach Tom Zinsmaster and Brian Birchmeyer. And both of those guys were more of the European style. They had more exposure to like the Shaiko methodologies, where we were doing, it was I don't know if there was rhyme or reason. I can't remember, but it was basically like undulating weeks of like upper day, but upper day was like higher repetition day, lower day was lower repetition day. And then we just alternated full body Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and it was like workout A, workout B. So ABA, BAB, ABA, and just kept going. So.
Got it. Yeah. So my first exposure to powerlifting was 2010-ish. And it was, West Side, Louis Simmons, all that was kind of my first exposure to powerlifting programming. And then I got, we had the birth of raw powerlifting, and, you had guys like Mark Bell kind of popularizing it in terms of just putting it out there on YouTube with the Stan Efferdings, the Dan Greens, the Pete Rubishes and Eric Lillybridges and all those guys who were jacked and they were doing it raw, and it kind of started that new wave in powerlifting. Was there kind of a turning point as the years went by and you got a little bit deeper into your powerlifting career? Was there a point where it was like, okay, I've got a future in this? Like, you realized that you had some real potential?
That's great question. And you named the names that I would bring up in the context of that, because I told you I was in college. It was like 2012, 2013 time when I was really like, okay, powerlifting is my thing, like definitely my thing, like my single and only thing. It's like, that's what I'm fucking doing now. And I started watching those guys on YouTube. I saw, if you remember the old Animal Underground videos with like Dan, Ben Seath, Grant Higa, all those guys. And I ended up going, the thing, like the formative memory that sticks out in my mind was I went to the Arnold, because I went to school at John Carroll University in Cleveland, Ohio. So I was like, okay, I'm down here. The Arnold is like 2.5 hours away. I'm fucking going, absolutely, like, because these are the guys that I idolized. And the thing that was crazy for me, because I'm not a big dude. I'm just under 5'7", and at the time I was like 200 pounds, like 210-ish something. I don't know, but I went there and I met Mark. I literally was just one of the expo dudes, like expo guy, just walking around, shaking hands, getting photos. And I met all these guys. I met Mark. I met Chris Duffin. I met Ben Seath, Jesse Norris, Dan Green, Grant Higa. It's everybody else, basically anybody that you could think of. And I got all these photos with him. And throughout the whole day, I was like, okay, I'm starstruck. But then I had this little voice in the back of my head where I was like, these guys are just guys. They're just people. And I'm like, I know they're really good at this, but I know that I try really hard at this. And I feel like I could be just as good as these guys because they're just people. It's like I'm looking into this dude's eyes. Like he's not some like otherworldly mythical creature. And it really just, I wasn't like mad, but I was just like, I think I could, not in an offensive way, but I was like, fuck these guys. I can do this. I can do this. Why, if they can do it, why can't I do it? And then after that in 2000, cause that was 2014. And then 2015, I hit my first pro total at 198. I hit 1725 at the Lexan Extreme Fall Classic in Columbus, Ohio, I think it was. And beyond that, like 2015, I did that. 2016, I got stronger. 2016, I bombed out of a meet and tore my bicep. Came back and totaled 2,006 pounds raw at Reebok Record Breakers. And then after that one, 2017 US Open, I hit that 2,121 pound total. And it was just really like, just looking at those guys, and it's like I've talked to people who have kind of experienced the same thing with me, where it's like you meet someone who's like, oh, this otherworldly, like mythical person on the internet, and it's hard to conceptualize, like that's just a dude. But then you like go shake hands, and it's like, that dude's just like me. And if he's just like me, why can't I do the things that he does? You know? And it's that little like starts that domino, that little gear that's turning, and it's like, wait a minute, like, no, this isn't some crazy otherworldly task. It's just a fucking guy lifting weights, and I'm a fucking guy lifting weights. So I'm gonna come for that dude, you know?
Yep. No doubt. I mean, they put their pants on one leg at a time, just like you do. No, that's so. Over the course of your career, did you feel, was it kind of steady, incremental growth? Was there ever a point where a programming change kind of catapulted things, or maybe was it this just mindset shift where suddenly success kind of skyrocketed for you?
I think it was the mindset shift, honestly, because around that time, and not to, just full disclosure, like that, there was a period of time where I went from competing in the USAPL, which is drug tested, to competing in any other federation, which is untested. So that's obviously a variable. But even before ending my tenure in the USAPL, I was like, I was headhunting guys. I was like, I'm coming for that dude. Like, he doesn't know who I am, but if you might not know him, but do you know Johnny Candido?
Oh yeah, I was a fan of him on YouTube for years.
Same, Candido, Ben Rice, those guys. I looked at Candido and I was like, he's competing at Raw Nationals in 2014. I'm going to come for his fucking neck. Fuck that guy, you know? And I did, and I came down there and I ended up losing to him, but I got a podium place at USAPL, Raw Nats. And beyond that, it was always just like that mindset shift, and that just like that little attitude adjustment where it was like, okay, like these guys aren't just some otherworldly thing that can't be reached. It's like, I can be just as good as them. So I'm going to be, you know?
Absolutely. And, you mentioned that transition from going from the USAPL to the not USAPL, which we all know what that means.
Mm-hmm.
Was that a tough decision? Was that an easy decision going from the natty to the enhanced side?
I mean, it wasn't a tough decision because I was 21 years old. So it wasn't really much of a decision. It was a kid who's just like, fuck it, I want to do this. I want to be like these guys. And I did it. And I look back on it, and it's not that I regret it, but like there are a lot of things that I would have done differently, because like I absolutely was irresponsible in my dosing, duration, usage in general for a lot of my career, like around that time, especially the beginning. But inside of that, like, I worked for Elite FTS for 2.5, 3 years around that time. And Dave's maxims are constantly drilled in my head. I have live, learn, pass on tattooed on my arm, like for a reason. But one of the ones is earn your regrets, which is like, don't regret the things in your life, because like, yeah, you might wish the outcome was different, or in an ideal situation, you would have done something differently. But having made the mistakes, made the brash, like irresponsible decisions, that's one of the aspects that put me in such a position to be the coach that I am today, because and the voice of authority, whatever that means in powerlifting, that I can be today. Because I've never been one to shy away from conversation about like safer use or irresponsible use or better options out there, like some of the non-androgenic PEDs. And I think my dad raised me right and raised me to be like a man like him, because he's actually he was just elected mayor of Flushing, Michigan. So he's dummy like me, trying to make positive change in the community just by fucking yelling into the abyss constantly. But he raised me to believe that like, if you have the opportunity to do good or like make positive change happen, it's not the opportunity, you have the obligation to. And that's how I look at my exposure to PED usage. It's like, yeah, I would love to go back in the past and be like, hey, dude, you don't need that much. Hey, dude, you don't need that. You don't need to run that year round. You don't need to fucking push that hard in that way. Just eat food and sleep and train and you'll get where you need to go. But I can't. So what do? I try to be as vocal as I can with the individuals that I coach and the people who watch me on social media that less is more in most instances. There's a reason I work for and work with an HRT wellness clinic out in Las Vegas, Helix HRT. And there's a reason that I'm so big on doing it the right way, because ultimately there is no such thing as safe use of PEDs. There's safer use and less risk. And people are going to use drugs. Like we all saw how prohibition worked in the United States. People who want to do something will find ways to do something. It's just the obligation of the people who have the knowledge and understanding and sometimes anecdotal experience to be like, hey, you're going to do this, but this is a better option than that. This is going to make it so that you live longer and you don't fuck yourself up. This is playing with fire, you know?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great way to look at it. And in today's day and age, I mean, there's so much information out there about PED use. I mean, everyone's talking about it. Everyone is so much more open about it than they were in years past. And you could kind of argue, I feel like there's pros and cons to that. On the one hand, there's more information on safe use. But then you could maybe also argue that because it's so highlighted and casual now, is that making it seem more accessible and acceptable to people who maybe otherwise wouldn't have done it? Because, I mean, you turn on Instagram now and you'll see your favorite bodybuilder influencer talking about their top 5 PED tier list. And it's, you know, it's so casual now. So what do you think? Is the extent to which information is just being talked about casually out there a good thing or a bad thing for PED use and people using it?
Dude, this is such a nuanced topic and such a hard discussion to have, where you actually like decide on one real viewpoint where it's like, yes, this is bad, or no, this is a good thing, because there's so much positive to it and there's so much negative to it, because we're never going to be able to, like, you can't put the genie back in the bottle, you know. As soon as, and not even talking about like the discussions of PEDs and like how common it is these days, but I mean like the flow and free access of information. Like, social media is so goddamn fast these days. It's like, how can we expect people not to talk about this? Because you think about, like, okay, people are talking about PEDs and like these bodybuilders are the top like ST, like Vigorous Steve. I'm friends with Steve. I love Steve. He's a fucking genius. He's a great dude. But then immediately sometimes I think like he's making lists like S tier compounds, and it's like, dog, like some fucking 14-year-old is going to see this and then ask his buddy at the gym like where he can get Tren, and it's like, what are we doing here, you know? But if you don't, like, this is where, like, I'm sure we could spend hours and hours talking about this, like taking the step back and not just looking at it from our perspective of like PEDs, which is the thing that we're focused on. How often have I seen on TikTok or Instagram or had my friends talking about it, there's blatant cocaine use, there's like jokes made about fucking Xanny bars, there's like, how big is kratom these days? And people don't realize that kratom is a fucking opiate analog that acts on the same receptors as heroin, and you will get DTs, aka withdrawals, if you take it too long and too much of a succession. It's the same fucking shit. But like this is it's just such a weird time, because technology gives us such access to all of these things and access to all of this information. And then it's like, is information bad? Because it's like, it kind of is, but it depends on who's delineating the information and who's receiving the information. So it's like, I can't even say it's good or bad. It's just the way that it is. And because it's the way that it is, I think that makes it even more of an obligation for folks like you and me who have, or try to have, a little bit more of a logical and rational approach to these things, trying to orient themselves more towards safer use and more towards responsible discussions around this stuff.
Yeah, no, and I agree. And I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, it's on the responsibility of the viewer to take the information and to make good decisions with it. And you mentioned kind of wishing you could go back, talk to your younger self about the dumb things you did. I mean, we all did stupid things when we were young, and it's easy to say, "Yeah, I wish I could go back and change that." But honestly, all of those stupid things we did early in our careers, they're part of what got us here where we are today. So honestly, I wouldn't change anything about the
Mhm.
past because they all contributed to lessons I've learned and lessons that I impart on the athletes that I'm coaching, and I'm sure you do the same.
Yep.
Um,
100%.
but going back to the powerlifting journey, so getting into programming here just a little bit. So you get to a point where you're a pretty damn elite powerlifter. Did you find that you had to make a change to your approach to programming and load management to go from, advanced powerlifter to all-time world record holding powerlifter? Did you have to make a change there?
Absolutely, dude. I just had this same conversation with one of my strongest lifters, Justin Zottel. He's the strongest Canadian to ever exist, I guess, is the title. He hit like a 2,300 pound total, squatted 1,000 pounds, bench 540, deadlifted 840. He's a fucking giant. He's very, very strong, very massive. But I told him the same thing. I was like, what got you to where you are is not going to be what takes you further. And I had to learn that same thing because I was always, and I still have this inclination to be the hammer, hammer, hammer guy. It's like more, more, more. I can will my way through anything. I will make this happen regardless of circumstance. And yeah, that's a powerful characteristic to have. But the better you get at one thing, again, like take a step back. What is powerlifting? It's maximal expression of physiological strength for like 7 to 10 seconds, and requires a great deal of coordination, great deal of effort paid towards reaction time, muscular hypertrophy, control, et cetera, et cetera. Like the neurological stuff happening in the brain is like fucking crazy in order to sustain that. How can you then expect to get so good at that you are able to recruit that degree of like motor unit recruitment, neuromuscular facilitation, all that metabolic shit that happens behind the screen? How can you expect to do that every fucking week and just add 5 pounds to the bar? Just linear progression into the meat, duh, bro. Like, why don't you just 5 by 5 and keep it fucking moving? That is not how the elite powerlifter becomes elite. And if someone does that as an elite powerlifter, they're not the rule, they're the exception. Because I personally, and I know this is my own anecdote, it doesn't apply to everyone, but I'm super confident in saying it applies to most people. I had to do less to get better. I had to understand that I couldn't redline it every week. I couldn't push as hard as I needed to. I need to spend more time developing my like the repeatability in my technique, the precision in my technique, and make it more of a directed focus towards addressing my particular areas of struggle, like a weak point training or even aerobic capacity or coordination, and then only go really hard and really heavy the 1 or 2 times I needed to prepare myself for the competition. It's very much it's not that daily undulating periodization, the approach that I take, but it is undulating in the sense that the objectives for each session undulate and wave up and down, because like the thing that made the most sense to me, or the thing that made the biggest impact on my own progression, was understanding not only that I can't go heavy every single week, but also on the weeks that I may not go heavy, I could still upregulate some degree of intensity, not as intensity relating to the percentage of your 1 rep max, but intensity as in degree of focus. So something that helped me incredibly was taking those lighter weeks and basically chilling out on those weeks, but then doing more tempo work, more positional awareness work, more developmental work, from the sense of looking at powerlifting as an actual skill rather than just the blanket statement of I need bigger muscles, I need to be stronger. You have to look at it like a field athlete, where you break the movement into segments, and then you train those segments to then bring that back together and be able to express that top end strength in a bigger manner.
Yeah, I mean, and it seems like the stronger you get, the less frequently you can take those heavy squat sessions. I mean, I remember, Ray Williams would squat once every 14 days, if
Hmm.
that, when he got to a certain point in his career. And I mean, I like that approach with you, kind of doing that AB week rotation where you've got your heavy week, and then on your lighter week, you're shifting your focus. Okay, it's lighter, but it doesn't mean you're just going in there and fucking around.
Yep.
It's a skill week. You're honing
Hmm.
it, whether that's the tempo, the positioning, all those things. Those are still highly beneficial weeks, and I'm sure you're getting some, good quote unquote active recovery from that. Because at the end of the day, squatting, benching, and deadlifting is your sport.
Hmm.
It is a skill, and just like any other skill, you need to practice it.
Hmm.
And the heavier those weights get, the stronger you get. People from the outside looking in, they might think, oh, from a skill perspective, it must just get easier. It's just squatting,
Hmm.
benching, deadlifting. It's simple. You've been doing it for years. As you get more advanced, it probably becomes easier. Well, it's like, no, like you said, the neuromuscular coordination required as those weights get so much heavier, even just the walkout of
Hmm.
a squat, when you go from a 500-pound squatter to an 800-pound squatter, even the walkout itself, like that's a skill that becomes so much more difficult. But I like that A and that B week approach. Now you've had your fair share of injuries
Yeah.
along the way. Why don't you rattle off some of the
Oh,
laundry
dude.
list of injuries you've had?
I don't know if we'll run out of time, but I've had ruptured and repaired distal bicep tendon on my right side and my left side, grade 2 tear in my pec, 2 herniated discs in my neck, 2 herniated discs in my lumbar spine. I have no meniscus in my right knee. I have no meniscus in my left knee. Grade 2 tear, VMO, vastus medialis on the right side, ruptured popliteus that is completely detached still on the right side. Um, I don't know, more stuff, but those are the big ones. The biggest one was from that famous bar bending video that
Yeah,
herniated the 2 discs in my neck.
I'm sure you've never done a podcast where this has not come up at this
I
point. I'm sure
truly,
you've talked
I
about this
haven't.
thousands of times. I'll let you describe your perspective of the experience. I'm going to give
Mhm.
a quick my perspective of this video to my audience. So for those of you who've not seen this viral video, Joe was squatting, and what was the weight you had on the bar? Was it 585?
675, 675
675.
pounds.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Joe's squatting 675. He goes down with it. As he starts standing up, the bar just starts bending. The bar is no longer supporting the weight. There's something wrong with the bar. It starts bending like a noodle. And Joe is slowly standing up, but the bar is just morphing around his body. By the time you finally stood up with this thing, the bar was so morphed that you couldn't even get it into the J hooks anymore.
Mhm.
And I mean, I watched this video, and there's been a few moments in my lifting career where I've had a major, like, oh shit, panic moment. Like, this bar might not be going up, and I don't have a spotter, and I don't have an escape route. And
Mhm.
it's like a terrifying feeling. Watching this video of you that lasts forever, like, it is one of the most gut wrenching, nightmarish things I've ever seen. I can't imagine. Like, it must have felt like an eternity for you. What was that like?
It felt like the world was ending, dude.
Yeah.
That's exactly because I honestly, I don't know whether my perception was skewed or I just thought I was failing and I was like, it's so fucking heavy. I can't, I wasn't at my home gym. That was a random day pass that I got at a CrossFit box in West Virginia because I was coaching athletes at a meet. And I'm like, I'm just going to go get my quick session in because I'm in prep for a meet. I'm going to make it happen. And I was like, fuck, I can't dump this bar. I'm going to be some jackass breaking shit at some gym that I don't even fucking know. And I remember thinking that the whip was like really excessive, like the whip being like the flex in the bar. And I'm like, why is it fucking whipping so much? Like, did I fuck up the loading? And then I hit the squat and I'm like, holy shit, am I having a bad day? Or like, I just shouldn't have done this when I traveled. I don't know. I still remember like all of these thoughts occurring while I'm pushing. Cause I'm like, okay, can't stop pushing, have to keep going. But like, what the fuck? Why can't I do? It's supposed to be a triple. I was supposed to do a triple at 7:05. So I'm like, this is my last warm up. What the fuck is going on? Oh shit. Okay, I got to keep going. I'm not going to miss this. I'm going to stand up with it. And I finally stood up with it, and it felt weird on my back, but I didn't realize that the bar had bent until I look over, and in that video, after like the 15 or 20 seconds had occurred where the whole thing fucking happened, I look over and I'm like, fuck. And I just say fuck because I realize that the weight is now like at my hip. It's at the level of my rib cage. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And racking it, like you said, I had to punch my way out of it and kind of like jump forward and twist my body. People thought that it was like, and it still is, it was a crazy, funny, viral video, but people thought that I was unscathed. And I was like, oh, he jumped out of it. But when I twisted, the bar didn't bend to like a Duffalo or a Buffalo bow bar where it was like an even arc of a rainbow. It bent to a triangle to one point.
Like the tip of a pyramid.
Yeah, and that singular point pushed down on my neck and trap, which herniated the C6, C7 discs. And that caused a nerve compression injury to my dorsal scapular nerve and my thoracodorsal nerve. Because at that time, I thought my first open all-time world record was going to be the bench press. Because in training for that meet, I hit a 575-pound bench press, and the all-time world record at that time was 576. After I had that dorsal scapular nerve injury, and I didn't know what it was at first because I just thought I was like getting weaker or something. But I lost function of my left tricep, left pec, and left lat. Because when you have such a compression to that nerve root, it will literally cause severe atrophy almost like immediately. And that was a gigantic head fuck coming out of that. But the whole experience, like the biggest thing that stands out in my mind, and when I watch the video back, is the reason that it felt so overwhelming is like, I'm sure you've done like overcoming isometrics before, or like an isometric into like a plyometric or something like that. Everybody has familiarity with those. It felt as though it was an overcoming isometric that I was actually overcoming, because as my body was coming up and my knees and hips were extending, the weight was still going down because it was like bending through me standing up. And it was just the most overwhelming sensation, like the heaviest feeling squat I've ever fucking done, dude.
Westside's got to throw that into the max effort rotation. I mean, that's a hell of an accommodating resistance setup right there. Jesus.
I don't know how somebody could make a product like that, but if they do, fucking give me some fucking royalties or something. I don't know.
Yeah, seriously. Well, actually, I was one of those people who thought you kind of came out unscathed from that. I knew you'd had that nerve issue that you've battled ever since then. I didn't realize it was that moment that caused that nerve issue.
Yeah.
And well, you know, I've dealt with my own nerve issue myself. It was what ended my strongman career. I had a herniated L5-S1 that compressed the nerve so badly that I lost a lot of the function of my right leg. And to this day, my right calf is just fucked. It's 50% atrophied. I've got no strength in my right calf, so I just lost the ability to do heavy yoke and farmer's walks and anything like that. So now your best total and your all-time world record squat, those came after this injury, though, correct?
Yep.
So I mean, how much? What did you bench with your best total? What was your bench?
With my best total, was 496 pounds.
Was it like, did it derail you mentally? No, like, because obviously had you not had this injury, I'm sure you would have gone on to bench way more than that, I'm sure. And I mean, did it just throw you, how hard was it mentally continuing on pursuing these huge totals, knowing that you're now fighting this incredibly uphill battle with this nerve damage, especially pertaining to bench?
Dude, it was some of the hardest stuff I've ever had to deal with and like have internal conversations with surrounding, you know. It was incredibly difficult. It still is difficult, honestly, because it's not you know, you have a nerve injury, you know how it goes. It's not as if it goes away entirely. It's a constant issue that even in bodybuilding posing right now, I have to be hyper aware of my left side in order to like get better pose better, because if I do an even presentation, this side is all cockeyed compared to the right side. So it's still an issue. It was incredibly difficult, man, because like it was finicky. It would get a little bit better and then get just as worse and get a little bit better and get just as worse. And it was just this ongoing thing. And only like recently is when I hit my best raw with sleeves total, which I think is the one that you're referencing. That was 2,063 pounds at the March 2023 meet. And that was with that 496 bench. And I'm so goddamn proud of that, because it has taken me so much effort and so much creativity, because I've done consultations with physiotherapists, like dealing with spinal rehab. I've done the gambit of modalities like dry needling, ART, stem cells, PRP, whatever else, like I've literally emptied the clip in regards to like trying any different avenue to make it happen. And there's a reason. And again, this is why I can't say that I regret anything that I did, because it made me who I am. The name of my business and the name of my whole brand, it's the Adapt or Die Collective. That's not just words for me, bro. That's like my whole fucking motto and the shit that I feel in my heart every time it beats, because it's easy to be like, oh, adapt or die. Like that or is actually a choice. There is no choice there. You either figure it the fuck out or you get the fuck out of the way. And I'm never going to be the guy that stops going after the things that I want, even if it means I have to pivot and like change the goals, reestablish the relationship between the goals. Cause I always thought my squat bench was going to carry my whole total and I'm just going to be this big Billy badass. And then it's like, all right, well, I can't really use my upper body as well as I can. I just have to double down on squatting, and ended up breaking an all-time world record that way,
Yeah. I mean, and it's another one of those things looking back. It's like, we see these quote unquote negatives from our past, and it's easy to look back and say, God, if only this had been different. But it's like, it's part of what made us who we are today. Mm-hmm. Like when I had my nerve injury, I had several months there where I could pretty much just do mobility work, lower body. So I was like, all right, you know what? I'm going to dive so deep into loaded mobility, and I'm going to learn so much along the way. This is my new challenge for myself: become the most mobile human I can possibly be. And then it added so many valuable tools to my toolbox that I brought to my coaching. I learned so much about my own body and recovery. Like along the way, I'm sure you learned so much, and it's made you such a better coach as well as a better lifter, just having to go through all those trials and tribulations, battling through that injury, having to figure out new programming approaches, different rehab approaches, trying all the different therapeutic modalities, all those things. When injuries happen, some people just fold and they quit. And then it's guys like you adapt and you get better from it. You learn from it. So that's awesome. Were there any, I know you said you emptied the clip and everything, just getting back into some more of the, some of the substances. Did you utilize peptides, BPC 157, try any modalities along those lines?
I did try the healing peptides, but those weren't the things that were the difference maker. This is where it kind of gets into this isn't medical advice. This is not medical advice. Or anything that I recommend, but I got into like the brain drug side of things and like motor learning avenues, and really tried to upregulate that mechanism to literally relearn how to use my upper body in the way that I wanted to. And that was the most effective way of doing things. John, do you know Go Superbrain, Andy Triana?
So Andy Triana and I are friends. We lifted at the same gym in Raleigh, North Carolina. He was training at Spider Strength for a while. I mean, talk about a unique individual in Andy, but go on.
And Andy's my fucking homie. I love Andy. Like he's one of my best buddies. And he and I did some really, really unconventional shit. And it made the biggest positive impact for me reclaiming the function of my upper extremity. And it was a combination of brain drugs and like relearning motor unit control and neural pathways through the use. And like, it's not just randomly using it. It's like with certain sessions addressing certain energy systems in regards to like bioenergetics, and addressing like certain aspects of coordination and shit in that realm, I would use low doses of psilocybin, Nupept, and high dose injectable choline to really drive, and low doses of insulin to drive motor learning pathways and relearn how to use my upper extremity. And that was a large aspect of my my ability to come back and hit that biggest total that I hit, the biggest raw total. That was after I did all of this work with Andy and all of these unconventional means. It's really what helped me get there.
That's interesting. And I know you've kind of been on record in the past of highlighting some of the use of the psilocybin. Can you talk about that a little bit more? Because I mean, that's kind of obviously a very stigmatized topic out there, but another one of those things where psychedelic therapies are becoming a little bit more accepted in the mainstream. And, you know, I've got my own opinions on this, but I'm curious to hear some of your experiences with the psilocybin.
So I'm super interested to hear your opinion on it too. But like, I'm of the mind, and I think I get a lot of this from hanging out with guys like Andy. I always look at things as tools, and a lot of the times there's appropriate use of a tool, and a lot of other times there's inappropriate uses of that same tool. The same tool that you use to do this job really well may not be really suited for that other job over there. Some people can effectively use like low dose psilocybin, which we know increases your ability to be neurally plastic and learn new things, which that's neuroplasticity. It's like your ability to develop new neurological and brain connections and just do shit differently. Psilocybin just achieves that. It puts you in a state where you're more receptive to new information. That's why everybody who does magic mushrooms in too high of a dose for the first time, they go out on that cabin trip with all their buddies and they get fucked up, and they come back and they're like, oh my God, I just look at life so differently. Perspective is so open. I love this. This is so great. It's because it puts you in a state where it's very easy to see and feel and experience like alternative perspectives of your own. And if you know that, this is where like I think you and I share so many viewpoints. It's like if you take a step back and look at the situation from what is the desired outcome that we want to have happen, and if we know that someone needs to learn something, and it may not be learn in the sense of like, oh, I need to learn a new language. It's like I need to learn how to contract this muscle the way that I used to contract this muscle. Put that person in a situation where that tool would be appropriate, use a little bit to increase the ability to learn, do the specific exercises that will evoke or cause that stimulus to occur, which will then cause that adaptation to subsequently occur. And if you're using something that makes the adaptation happen to a larger degree or at a more rapid rate, what's bad about that tool? Doesn't mean that you should just be getting fucked up and doing like little doses of psilocybin before every training session, because then you're just using drugs. Then you're just fucking around. But if you understand the purpose behind the use of something and you can justify the use in a responsible way, everything's a tool. It's like, I'm never going to be I know a lot of guys who rant and rave about how tren is the most terrible compound on the planet. And I think that it is abused a lot. I think that it's used inappropriately a lot, but it's absolutely effective in certain contexts. I've had athletes that have done it very successfully. I personally have used it very successfully. And in my past, there have been periods where I fucking abused it. It's the nature of the beast, and it's understanding what's the desired outcome. Is this appropriate? If yes, go ahead. If no, don't do it.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, it's kind of the dose makes the poison, just that everything has its potential place. Everything has its potential benefit. And on the other side of that coin, everything has the potential to be utilized incorrectly or abused, whatever the case may be. It's very interesting to me the way that you and Andy brought the psilocybin into the equation, just kind of that motor relearning, re-engaging with those motor units where the tissue was affected by the nerve damage. Was it always microdoses? Did you ever have any experiences with using a macrodose of it, going with a full trip?
So prefacing, Effective use of the tool was microdosing. I'm not going to lie to you. I've absolutely taken psychedelics and like gone very on the spectrum of like a hero dose for sure.
Hmm.
But that wasn't for any purpose other than like me and Brianni got an Airbnb and we want to fucking hang out and spend some time with one another walking on a beach. That was the experience there. But that sometimes that's an appropriate use of a tool. Maybe, it just depends on your perspective.
Yeah, no doubt. And again, to the audience, we are not condoning the use of psilocybin. Obviously, in most places, it's going to be illegal, and it's something that has the potential to be abused. So, I've my own experience with psilocybin. There was a period of my life where I was in a pretty bad place mentally. I was dealing with a lot of anxiety. Just going through a tough time mentally. And I was seeing a therapist, and the topic of therapeutic psychedelics had come up. And it was something that I tried. Now, over a 2-year period, I had 5 psilocybin trips. And one thing I will say is anyone who ever does this, I would not look at psilocybin like a party drug. Like I look at it with the utmost respect, especially having experienced it. Just the place it can take you mentally. It really does show you a different perspective on things. It showed me a new perspective on things, and it helped me. It helped me, and it's not something like weed where it's like, oh, you casually you smoke some weed, get high, get the giggles, get the munchies, go to bed, wake up the next day. Like the psilocybin, like it's an ordeal. Like it is an ordeal. Like clear your schedule for the day. Like buckle up for a roller coaster. You're gonna cry. You're gonna laugh. You're gonna go through the full spectrum of emotions. Anything you're dealing with, you are probably going to be confronted with it. And that's not something I can imagine myself doing in like a public place, certainly not in a party setting. It was something I did in the comfort of my own home. My wife was nearby, and it benefited me. And now I also did use the microdosing for a period of time, and it helped me tremendously with my anxiety. I thought it was such a better alternative to the pharmaceutical approach that your typical doctors are going to take. But anyway, just the protocols you guys use, that's interesting to me, and I can very much see how that would have a benefit in terms of just reconnecting with your ability to fire those motor units where the nerve has been damaged. And another one you touched on was the use of insulin as kind of a brain drug. And most people are not aware that it can be utilized in that way. And you classically, the bodybuilders use it as a carb partitioning agent, right? Talk about some of the benefits of the insulin use as you guys were using it, more for the neurological and learning perspective of it.
Absolutely. And this is I'm not gonna attempt to explain like aspects of the brain, because there is like communication and interaction between like the dopaminergic system and the cholinergic system, and that's like a little bit beyond my understanding. I could like rough my way through it, but I don't want to say anything incorrectly. The best way that I understand it is because like it's kind of due to what bodybuilders experience when they take insulin. If you're training like a bodybuilder, other bodybuilders, we've all idolized bodybuilders. If we follow somebody on social media and they talk about drugs, they're like, man, when I added insulin, my pumps were fucking crazy. I just felt huge, and it was the one thing that put that size on me. And then it's like, okay, again, take the step back and understand what's the physiological thing that is actually occurring there that causes the pumps to be crazy, that causes that mental connection to occur to a greater degree. If you increase the permeability of the cell membrane and you allow the basic like rotation and not transition, but like the cyclic nature of the stuff going into the cell and coming out of the cell regarding muscular contraction, because everything that happens in the body is all due to hormonal signals or electrical signals. when you increase the permeability, you can increase the reactivity of those cells on a cellular level so that communication can occur in a more rapid rate. And when it becomes quicker and more efficient and more like just zoomy, I always call it like, I always make the joke, and me and Brie are always like, oh, we're Zoom. It's like Zoom. It's a Zoom day, where it's like, okay, we're taking like some alpha GPC and some insulin and maybe extra caffeine or something like that. You know, it's where you increase the reactivity. And because you increase the reactivity, yes, you get way better pumps, way better fullness. You can cause nutrient partitioning to go like basically directly to those muscles where this reactivity is occurring. But then what is the mechanism by which the muscles are actually made to do shit? It's the electrical signaling that occurs up in the brain. So if we know that the stuff down here locally is occurring at a more rapid, and in the muscles and the extremities is occurring more rapidly and to a greater degree, then we also understand what has to match it, everything that's occurring in the brain. And that what's the most basic, or one of the most basic strength and conditioning principles we all learned about in our old NSCA textbook. The SAID principle, specific adaptations to impose demands. If I'm imposing demands where my muscles are reacting to this degree and my brain has to meet that demand, I pair it with some psilocybin so that I upregulate that neuroplasticity and the connectivity occurring here, so I can match the demand that is being asked for or demanded in the extremity, in the muscles, and both locally and like proximal thing that's happening in the brain matches up with distal thing that's happening in the body. And then you get this really crazy synchronicity where motor learning or like refamiliarization or just acclimation to a movement, to a position, to utilizing certain musculature can occur at a greater rate and to a greater degree when you pair these things together with a purpose in the specific context.
Well, you're clearly playing chess where a lot of other people are playing checkers when it comes to the utilization of a lot of these compounds. And listen, for anyone in the audience who's new, intermediate in your lifting career, you do not need to be utilizing insulin or psilocybin in order to connect more neurologically and mentally in training. Like this part of the conversation, you do not need to be applying this right now. I mean, Joe is at a point in his career where, I mean, he is pursuing all-time world records. He is battling just catastrophic injuries and just it's his career. Okay, it was literally his career, so he's got to pull out all the stops just to extend that career, and obviously it's paid off for you. So I've got a couple more things I want to touch on. I mean, God, there's so many things so many topics we've already covered. We could just spend an hour on in and of itself. But going to Bree, your significant other. So can you give her? You kind of already touched on some of her credentials. She's obviously an incredibly accomplished powerlifter herself, an incredibly accomplished bodybuilder, and she's also your coach. So here's one thing I'm curious on. How does that dynamic work where you've got two great lifters, I'm sure, with your own opinions on whether on programming or diet? Do you feel like it's a great cohesive, good synchronicity, or are there times where there's a little bit of clashing of opinions that maybe, you know, you've got to navigate that in the relationship side of it?
I wish she was here to share in the discussion, honestly, because like I don't want to speak for her, but I'm fairly certain we'd say the same thing. I've always been, for lack of a better word, I've always been drawn to women who are fiery, who are very, very passionate, very like have their own opinions, and Bree is the epitome of that. She is a fucking hard-nosed lady, and I love it about her because she's never afraid to tell me exactly how she thinks I'm wrong. But in that same vein, I have no qualms with criticizing her, being like, hey, you're wrong about this. You need to do this better or something. And I think that's one of the reasons that her and I are both such good athletes, because we both have that sport background where we're not opposed to receiving criticism, but we're also very, very good. Like, honestly, it's the base. It's so cliche and everybody's going to like fucking vomit at the cliche, but the core base of any successful relationship, whether it's between someone and their partner, someone and their best friend, someone and their coach and a client, it's communication, trust, and understanding always. And we just work well together, dude. Like it was crazy because I coach her. I coach her for powerlifting when she's in powerlifting, and it is. Yeah, there's some moments where it's like, God damn, I wish I didn't have to fucking like be coached by the lady that I live with. And it's like, just get off my fucking back sometimes. Or like, no, I think this is a better decision, but okay, I trust her. So we're going to do this. And it goes in the reverse because that's where I wish she was here to talk about it. Cause she fucking hates some of the programming decisions that I make for her program because I the same way that I operate, where I'm so technically proficient in the squat and I'm so good at eliciting damage to myself, and I also need a lot of time spent dedicated towards like the coordination and the actual execution of the lifts. She's the same way, being the best female deadlifter on the planet. So I have her do some very, very brutal shit that she would rather not do a lot of the time. But she knows that it is going, because we are a team and I'm doing it in the effort to get her to the goals that she wants and desires. She knows it's what's good for her. And I know in the reverse, like don't get me wrong, we fucking argue. There's moments where like we're both like weirdo fucking like neurodivergent in some way type of people where like our normal conversations, like everybody thinks we're arguing all the time because we just bicker and it's just back and forth all the time. But I am very safe in communicating that way with her, and she's very, very safe in communicating that way with me. And it just works really well. And I mean, like there's something to it because like who won the Olympia last year? Samson Soda. And he's coached by his wife. It's like it's got to be something. I took her to the fucking six meets she did last year, and every single one she won. So like it's something to it. Like maybe I'll return the favor and I'll do well at the bodybuilding show. I don't know.
Yeah, man. No, it's awesome that you guys are able to successfully navigate that dynamic, and I'm sure the fact that you have only strengthens the personal side of the relationship. Mm-hmm. So you are coaching her, correct? Mm-hmm. And she's coaching you.
To clarify though, I am not coaching her in bodybuilding or the training currently. I'm her powerlifting
coach.
But with the bodybuilding, it's like I just don't. This is her time away from me, so it's like just go have fun and go do the thing.
So I've seen this. I've not personally experienced a relationship like this. Correct me if I'm wrong. I bet what could be harder and potentially create more of an issue would be if Brianni was being coached in powerlifting by someone else, and then you're looking at the program that this other coach has given her. You disagree with that program, and then you're having to navigate, I'm stepping in, now I'm criticizing her coach, now she's got to defend him. Is like I've seen that dynamic go south quickly when lifters are in a relationship. So the fact that you guys are coaching each other, from my perspective, that actually, I bet that works a little bit better.
It's keeping everything in the house, man. It's like the same way that everybody says, like, hey, like the easiest way to fuck up a relationship between you and your partner is go bitch about your relationship to someone else. It's like as soon as you start bringing other people into the equation and like going outside the house, it gets complicated. So it's like if you have a strong enough relationship where you can communicate and you trust the person and you understand the person, handle your business in here and it works way better, dude.
Yeah, no doubt. And I mean, based on everything you've said, I'm sure you are able to take a very objective approach to all this, but do you ever find it difficult to, you're making a tough programming decision for her, she's not going to like it. Do you find it difficult where you're battling that little bit? I want to be Joe the boyfriend versus Joe the coach I need to be?
I will tell you a story. I was flying to a competition to coach because I coach a bunch of people like all over the world and all over the US, and I'm on a flight way too fucking much. But it was at the same time that she was going into the ABS Pro, which was that pro powerlifting competition she won in Dublin, Ireland this past August. She was like 6 weeks out or something, and I had her do paused deadlifts, like heavy, against bands, and it sucked, and her SI was already slightly aggravated. It was the last session before a deload, and I was like, I need her to do this, and I wrote it, And she called me and she was like, just complaining, and I get it, and I'm hearing her. But then I had a little moment where I was like, hey, I understand that this sucks. I understand that you don't want to do it, but somebody somewhere out there is going to do it. And if they beat you, you will hate yourself for the rest of your life because you chose not to do this. And I can't remember what the other stuff was that I said, because she heard that and she read it back to me later and was like, that's the thing that resonated. But then I said something where I was like, stop being soft, or like blah, blah, blah. And I said something a little bit too harsh and I made her cry. And I was like, oh God. Because then I'm coach mode, where it's like talking about Justin Zottel, the big scary Canadian dude. I'm like, hey, motherfucker, shut the fuck up and do the thing. Like, do you trust me? Yes or no? Yes. Shut the fuck up and do it. I do that. I bring that same energy to my partner, who is hard-nosed, tough-ass bitch, just the bitch in charge, you know? But then I do that to her, and she's like, why are you being mean to me? And I'm like, oh, fuck. Oh, God. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It stings a little bit different when it's coming from the man you love.
It does. And then now I get it in reverse, because I'm like, I smoke a little weed at 8 p.m. when I'm done doing my stuff. Fucking look at that pantry over there, and I'm like,
I was gonna say, you're gonna be hating her when she's pulling your food out here when you're 6 weeks out from the stage.
It was hard. We were pushing a little bit the last like 4 weeks, and I got a bump up in my food. And I told you I was eating those potatoes, and I'm taking that shit seriously, because having two meals with 250 grams of rice and one meal with 250 grams of potatoes, I'm like, I'm gonna fucking buy her flowers. Like, I'm gonna rub her feet tonight. This shit's fucking amazing. Let's keep doing this.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, man, it's wild as you get really, really lean and deeper into this diet, just the obsessive nature you're going to start having with food. I mean, dude, just like you'll lose your interest in sex. You'll just be like, you'll be scrolling through cooking videos and on YouTube like it's porn. I mean, and just savoring every little bite of food you get. It's an interesting experience.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun, man. Some kind of fun.
Yeah. Well, I've got one last topic for you, and then I'll let you go here. Just so you've been an incredibly successful lifter, and now you've transitioned a little bit more into a very successful coach. You're running a thriving business. So the question I'm going to pose to you, are you Joe Sullivan, the lifter, or are you Joe Sullivan, the coach and business owner now? What would you, do you still have aspirations to pursue powerlifting at a high level? Are those days behind you? Speak on that a little bit.
That's a good question. And it's an ongoing discussion that I'm having with myself, with my people, and with everybody that I interact with, because I'm signed up for this bodybuilding competition. I'm doing that April 26th. I'm also signed up, and this is the first time I'm saying this to the public, so congrats, John. It's on your podcast. Like, you can fucking post it. I don't give a shit. I'm also signed up for the same competition Bree won in Dublin, Ireland last year. I'm signed up for the Abs Pro 7. I feel as though I have a couple of good hard runs left in me, but at the same time, ever since I started, I knew that I couldn't do this forever. And that, like, specter, you'll know what I'm talking about with this analogy, because I resonate with it. That specter of retirement and the specter of the end. Back in the day, like years ago, it's off in the distance. I knew that he was behind me, and I'm getting goosebumps talking about it. I knew that he was back there, but I'd like look over my shoulder and I could never see him. Now, I don't think he's caught me yet, but I look over my shoulder and I fucking see him right there. And I'm like, God damn, dude, that's a sobering fact, because there's going to be a time here soon, and it very well might be this next competition, where I put 100% of my effort into something and I do everything right, and I still cannot hit a PR or cannot be the best that I once was. And years ago, I honestly probably would have struggled to continue to do this with that. And it would have been really hard to accept that. But this is where, and I'm fucking getting teary eyed. This is where I am actually grateful for all of the things that I went through, whether it's like homelessness with my parents, poverty with my parents, the nerve injury, the torn biceps, divorce, whatever, like fucked up businesses, fucked up relationships. I'm grateful for all of those things, because adapt or die isn't just words on a t-shirt or on a tax form. It's my motto, and it's my lifeblood. So even if I am going to be one of those guys where it's like I'm that 60-year-old man rolling up to a powerlifting competition and I'm going to squat 400 pounds and bench 300 pounds and deadlift 400 pounds, I'm going to have a team of fucking hundreds of people behind me. And that's leading by example, because I know I'm not going to be able to hit PRs for the rest of my life. So why the fuck should I get upset about it? I should be grateful for the opportunity to get out on that platform and live by, God damn, I'm going to cry. Fucking bodybuilding, I'm dieting. Why am I so emotional? But I should be grateful for the fact that I can do that, and I can show people that they can still do that, you know? And you're going to see me on the powerlifting platform August 2nd, whether I squat 940 pounds, bench 530 pounds, deadlift 811 pounds, which those are my goals. Or I drag my fucking feet across the finish line and I squat 400, bench 400, and deadlift 400, because I'm not fucking dropping out of this one. I'm going to finish the job.
Hell yeah, man. It fires me up to hear it. And I mean, I know no matter what the outcome is on the platform, you're going to have success moving forward. And whether you smoke all those lifts you're setting out to hit, or whether, you know, something else is in the cards, you're going to adapt. You're going to learn from it. It's only going to benefit you. I mean, you're made out of a certain material that's rare, and it's the reason you are where you are today. And you're a successful coach. You've got this business. You've been one of the greatest powerlifters of our generation. I mean, you're successful in whatever you do, and that's only going to continue for you. And I'm a huge fan of you. I've been a fan of you for years. So I'm cheering for you, dude. I'm cheering for you on the bodybuilding stage. I can't wait to see the package you bring. I'm going to be cheering for you on that powerlifting platform and following along on that journey, and then cheering for you with whatever ventures are coming next, whether that's as an athlete, and maybe you're going to catch this bodybuilding bug thing, and you never know, you might be doing this for the next decade,
Maybe,
or whether that's just purely with AOD, with your business and coaching. But anyway, Joe, I won't keep you any longer. Thank you so much for coming on and doing the podcast. I mean, this was awesome. You put out so much just valuable information from just the X's and O's side of thing, but also from the mindset side of thing. And you're an incredibly good figure to be out there for the sport of powerlifting. You're a great ambassador for the sport. So keep doing what you're doing. But where can people find you right now, whether it's for your coaching services, whatever? Go ahead and tell people where to find you.
I'm primarily on Instagram. It's Joe Sullivan _AOD. My website is the AOD Collective. You can buy programs, join my group training, hire me as a coach, book me for a consultation, or just shoot me a DM and talk to me, because like I said at the beginning of this, I do have a really great team behind me. I have some awesome supporters and awesome employees and awesome colleagues. But at the end of the day, I'm just some meathead with a smartphone. So you guys know how to get a hold of me if you got my Instagram or you got my email. So I look forward to anybody who listens to this. I hope you guys took something away from it, and send me a message if you want to talk.
Awesome, man. Well, you guys heard him. Go give Joe a follow, and anyone who this stuff resonated with, hit him up. He's a fantastic coach, fantastic man. And Joe, thank you so much for doing this, man.
Thank you for having me, man. I've been good conversation. I really enjoyed it, man. Thank you.
Good conversation indeed. All right, guys, we'll see you on the next episode. All right, Joe.